Let me welcome you to Chat with Matt. My special guest today is Allan Grafman, who I've known for over 20 years. The quick story is that Allan actually came to one of my meetings in Westport at the beginning of one of his searches, and this goes back to 1997, which is several weeks ago. And a lot of amazing coincidences in our lives that I mentioned in the promo piece. We're both Indiana University graduates. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We both know someone that I met when she was a teenager. This is his boss at Oberon Securities. So that's an amazing coincidence in and of itself, don't you think, Allan?
It's a small world.
It is a small world. And here I am making all my efforts to make it even smaller and having a modicum of success doing that. So uh, we're going to be talking about the investment banking process. Allan has a very interesting background, and I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. My own personal experience has been that when people introduce me as a guest speaker, they always botch it, and I'd rather Allan give a professional touch of with his introduction and tell you what you should know about Allan Grafman. So, Allan, why don't you take over here? I will do my best to kibitz from the sidelines from time to time, but it's mostly your show. And want to give us your background, and then why don't you tell us what we're planning to cover?
Okay, great. I'm going to give you the background. I am going to cover, and I have a story that goes back to how Matt and I met. So my entire
Great.
career has been monetizing intellectual property. I was very blessed to start as a radio announcer in the Midwest, St. Louis, and selling ad time. And so from there, that double helix of monetizing content, intellectual property, has been what I've pretty much always done. Had one detour into international trade, but I've done it in radio. I've done it for a Tribune company based in Chicago. Came to New York for Hallmark Entertainment, and I've had a series of roles with companies such as Archie Comics. I mentioned Hallmark. I mentioned Tribune. I did mention ABC Disney. There have been a whole host of companies that I have had different roles. Um, and if I can talk about the roles, they have ranged. If you think of a Rubik's Cube, there have been executive roles as chairman and CEO. There have been operational roles as CFO, and there have been sales roles, and they have been in large and small companies. So Matt and I, just to talk about, in 1997, I got a role as a chief financial officer of a large company. After 5 months, I'd improved the company's finances by $55 million. And it was a father and son team. And after that, with the movie van full, not only of possessions, but 3 kids and a wife, the father and son said, thanks, we got it from here, no worries. So we came to New York without a gig. Fortunately, I had a contract. And that was my New York journey. That was the kickoff to my New York journey. That's when I came up to visit Matt Budd and Wilton and became an early member of the Financial Executive Networking Group. And so I know I can help people perhaps. Generally, I'm able to, and we can come to that. But I hope to cover 5 areas. The first is a little bit about me and why you should care, which we've touched on. Mostly about my role as investment banker, which is more recent decade. Channel 2, I call All Media Ventures, which I've been monetizing content and doing business development for 28 years. Channel 3 is as a director and executive. I've served on 12 boards, and we can come back to all that. And then 5 ways that I can help you. So that's what I hope to cover. And I'm sure with Matt's adroit steering of this conversation, we'll cover all of them. So
Yeah,
back to you, Matt.
we're going to give it a go. We first have to deliver on the promise, but we're going to first do a little background. You've worked for several different companies in the media space, and any stories you'd like to share?
Well, I'll share one.
What was your favorite company, Alan?
Tribune, by far. It was
Oh, interesting.
yeah, it was a
I would have
paradigm.
suspected Archie Comics.
No, no. Archie Comics was a small private entrepreneur run. And you know the saying, founders create the value, second generation enjoys the value, third generation destroys the value.
Oh, okay.
And this was transitioning to second and third generation. Tribune was a paragon of a class of high moral ethics, hard work, fair play. And my favorite project is going to be coming back into the market in April because it will mark 40 years since I executive produced the highest rated syndicated special in the history of television, The Mystery of Al Capone's Vaults. And I'm advising a book is being written on that special. That special did a 35 NTI rating, and you could take 10 channels tonight and you wouldn't get a 35 rating. So that was a high point, and that was actually something it made history in a lot of ways. So Tribune by far.
Okay. And you've been in private equity, venture capital, public and private boards. What would you share about us? Career lessons, if you will. Those are a lot of very different environments.
So there, Matt, you said something earlier, which, if I want to paraphrase it, you need to have a lot of career balls in the air all at the same time. Now, it's great to, I think Emerson said it, chew your own bone. It's great to be focused and it's great to be mono-focused on the task at hand. But in today's world, unless your name is on the door, that's very hard to do. People get turned out really, really quickly. So I learned that lesson after improving the cash flow $55 million and being asked to essentially leave. It's really important to have at least a conception of how you would get past being laid off your current gig. And let me give an example. When I was in Chicago at Tribune, I was at the entertainment company, and then I got promoted to the parent company to do corporate development worldwide. I traveled the world, made deals on every continent.
Mhm.
And when there was a new CEO, wait for it, wait for it. When there was a new CEO, he decided that they didn't need someone doing corporate development. So yours truly got laid off. And that was not the
Uh-huh.
only time. But the point is, it was at that point that I formed All Media Ventures, and I've been doing business development for media companies for 28 years.
So I'll take a big guess here that networking plays a very important part in your career success.
So fortunately, there's been a complete when I was in college, man, at Indiana University, driving home from Bloomington to St. Louis, I actually said to someone that I didn't need anyone to be successful in life. And I've gone from that to 180 degrees. Now, you don't need to be a great networker. You know, if your father is Bill Gates, or you're a brilliant scientist, or you own a big piece of property. But for most people, one of the most important skills you can develop is the ability to give value when you're speaking with someone and to give before you ask. And in my view, that will make you a great resource and a great person who can give value and can network effectively. Because I make a point of reaching out to all of my contacts before I have an ask. And I do it twice a year. And I have thousands and thousands of contacts. And mostly I ask, how can I be helpful? Here's what I'm working on. Would love to have a 5 minute conversation. And if you're waiting till you have a need to reach out to somebody, that's going to be less interesting to people who can help you.
Yeah, oh, no, absolutely. The story goes in a networking group, there were people who only called you when they were looking for work. If
It's
they
the
called you,
norm.
you knew they were out of work again. Not a
Yeah,
good thing.
you don't want to be that person. You know, it's hard enough uh trying to get yourself planted in the next gig and having that transition's hard. I mean, I joined the financial and I was an okay I was a CFO. I was a pretty good CFO. I was going to say in that narrow instance, I was great because there was an urgent task,
Mhm.
but I'm not I don't have I'm not capable. And actually, by the way, after being turned down multiple times because I either didn't have a CPA degree or I didn't have a public exit, uh, I figured, you know what? I've done the CFO thing. There's a better use of my talent. So if you have that deep talent in the financial sector, use it and highlight it. But for me, I had to pivot to something different.
But you have several things that you're working on in addition to Oberon, your all media ventures, for example.
So let me tell you about All Media Ventures. I found it
You have a
with
three-legged stool going, right?
I have absolutely. I've got
So
the
it won't
investment
fall.
banking, which we'll come back to. I've got All Media Ventures, and I've got the board. So All Media Ventures, I founded with someone in Chicago. I bought him out when I moved to New York, and that does business development. So I will tell you that as part of that, uh, I was on Lake Michigan. We were vacationing. There was, as I mentioned before, I did Capone's Vault. There was a speaker 20 minutes away speaking on Capone and the 1933 World's Fair. He had written a book about it. And thanks to my wife, she drove me there. I met the guy. We made a deal. He's got 25 books. I now am the executive producer of turning those books into television, and we've made 2 deals so far. And his next book
Mhm.
is in April, which is going to be on the 40th anniversary of the Mystery of Al Capone's vaults. And there's a whole arc of a story there. But my point is that was a first meeting. And if you go out of your way to be interesting, not just, and forgive the vulgarity, not just barf up what you're interested. I try to encourage people not to use the word I because that's not so interesting to the people on the other side. It's more interesting. Find a way to bring that person into the conversation, put the focus on them. Dale Carnegie said you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That should be a guide to you.
Yeah. I tease my wife from time to time that she has this charm about her, and she turns and smiles at you and says, "Tell me your life's," and it figuratively says, "Tell me your life story. I'm really interested." Not many people do that,
Oh, so
but she's
so so
collected quite a few life stories.
I'm sure. So
I
Dale
point
Carnegie
out
was
you have to ask people.
100%
As
you have
someone
to
once
ask.
said, enough about you. Let me tell you about me.
That's a very Hollywood response. Dale Carnegie was at a luncheon, dinner, famous thing. The woman was nonstop, nonstop, nonstop. On the way out, the host asked, "So, how was your evening?" The lady said, "Wonderful. Mr. Carnegie is such a great conversationalist."
All right.
You will be known as a great conversationalist if you are a great listener.
Right. I tell people this in interviewing as well. The more questions you ask, the more you get them talking, the more they'll think you said so many brilliant things.
Right. Well, it's
Very
very true.
important.
And you have an
But
experienced group of executives, so I imagine most or many or perhaps all know the importance because you emphasize it, Matt, and you and I have known each other since 97
yeah, hard
and
to believe.
hard to believe.
I'm not even in my 20s. I don't know how that happened. So go
You're,
figure.
you're going in reverse.
Yeah. So I think you should just make the point again. You have a database of all the people that you know, and you work through it sort of from A to Z twice a year. Is that
And yes, that's correct.
correct?
So this is a technique that might be helpful. So if you use Outlook, you're able to categorize. So I have about 10 categories. Recruiters, which of course are the least valuable, private equity, venture capital, board directors, media, PR, bankers, venture, etc. And what I try to do, Matt, is I try to write a relevant note broadly. And then for each of those, I will use mail merge to generate, 400. But then over the course of a week or two, I personalize each and every one of them. And if I've sent out
Ah,
thousands, I've
mhm.
never had someone question it because each and every one of them has, like, if I haven't seen them since an event, I'll reference the event. If I know they've had a recent success, I'll reference it. So my point is using technology, but in a personal way, because you don't
Yes.
want to be that guy who, again, just throws out,
To whom it
uh,
may
you know,
concern,
yeah. Oh my gosh. I get emails.
or current occupant.
I get emails. Not only do they spell my name wrong, but they're talking about my role of president of a company that I left 2 years ago. And like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I take some pity, but not much.
No, no, you're absolutely right. There's nothing wrong with boilerplate, but you want to personalize it a bit. everyone wants people to treat them personally, so people in turn want to be treated personally. And putting those personal notes, embedding them in after you've generated the general note is a very smart approach and one that everybody can do. I don't recommend using Outlook for your contact database, but as long as you've got something, some tool, it's great. So let me just make sure everybody understands the chat box is open. My wife Peggy is supervising me today, and if you put something interesting in the chat box, she will interrupt us and ask your question. Okay, so Allan, why don't we get over to the reason why we're draining this swamp, which is to discuss the investment banking process. And you mentioned this assignment you had that took 2.5 years to close. So
Yes.
the ones that are the worst are usually the best stories. How did you get connected with these people? Let's start there.
Okay, so let me back up if I may, Matt,
Yeah,
to
oh,
tell.
absolutely.
Yeah. So how I became a registered FINRA investment banker for a firm, Oberon Securities, that has 60 to 80 bankers, been in business 25 years. So about 10 years ago, I've started working with them about 10 years ago, and they sponsored me in trying to buy out a company or two over the years. And about 8 years ago, they said, Alan, if you register, you'll get better economics. Because I took them a deal that became a pretty big success. We raised 22 million, and it became a pretty big success. So the month before I joined Oberon, and my background was finance, which I suspect everyone here's
Yeah.
background is finance. And I had been head of worldwide business development for a company or two. So I had a base of knowledge of what it takes. Of course, it was a modest base, but I did have a base. So before I got there, and this is to your question, Matt,
Yeah.
Lord Michael Grade, former CEO of the BBC, and his CEO, Peter Gerwe, had asked Oberon to raise some initial capital for them for their production company in London.
Oh, okay.
Oberon said, we don't have anybody here who can do that. That's a tough deal. 2 months later, I joined, and the CEO said, hey, I know this guy, Allan Grafman. I met him 10 years ago, and he's kind of stayed in touch, but I for sure know who he is. And Lord Michael Grade had met me 20 years ago, maybe even 30. So we came together. And it was hard because it was during Brexit, it was during COVID, and it was overseas in London. And it took me
Oh,
2.5 years. And they never lost faith. I never stopped working it. And the point is, sometimes that's required. And I've had private equity founders say, Alan, that's a great story. You should tell that often because sometimes deals require that kind of tenacity and not fobbing it off to an associate. So that was something I'm very proud of. And I won't, and Oberon and I won't take a client unless we're committed to success. And I won't take it unless I'm planning on working it until we succeed. And Oberon discourages its members to take things that are going to be exceptionally difficult to close, if at all. And some things are very difficult. Some things never close. You can't predict material adverse condition change. And so circumstances change sometimes to the detriment of your client.
hmm. So how do you identify those kinds of situations? What do you look for?
So I
Ones
will
that
tell
are,
you,
you know at the onset, they're impossible, we shouldn't take it.
I would say, I don't say this to prospects, but I will say, I don't want to take anyone's lunch money. If it's 6 months, I tell everybody it's going to be 6 to 12 months. And if that's going to be a challenge, then it's probably not a good set of circumstances because there's nothing worse than having a company fail and you're striving to raise money for them. I've never had a company go out of business while I was raising money for them. And part of it is they've got to be able to go 12, 15 months with a business that has enough clientele, enough revenue, enough success that it can go that long.
Even though they're trying to raise money.
Even though they're trying to raise money. They've got to be able to go a year or two. That I would say that's become, in my mind, the fundamental. If if they can't go a year, because I tell every client prospect it's going to take 6 to 12 months, and I walk through. It's going to take 2 to 6 weeks to get the documentation. It's going to take by documentation I mean the engagement letter. It's going to take two to not two. It's going to take 4 to 8 to 12 weeks to get the materials together. It's going by materials the presentation, the executive summary, and the presentation. It's going to take another 4 to 8 weeks, maybe longer, to go through the due diligence material. Then it's going to take 4 to 8 weeks or longer to be in the market. And then, and there's some overlap, and then weeks of presentations. And then even when you have someone, then there's an IOI, indication of interest, and hopefully you get more than one. And then you look for a letter of intent. Hopefully you get more than one. Then you negotiate with the preferred person. I mean, I just went through, there are 15 items on the due diligence list I provide prospective clients. And you're going to need to go through, it's 12 pages. There's 15 categories. I can go through it, or you can, I can send it to Matt. So you need to be able to provide that. And if you're working on a process, you want to be at least cognizant, if you're a CFO, at least cognizant of what's going to be needed. And in an ideal world, okay, what's the basic? The basic is you're cognizant. All right, there's 12 pages of due diligence. We're going to need to get to this. Ideally, it's all with a ribbon. That never happens. Um, if you know something's going to take like 15 months, well, don't plan on raising money for 15 months. If it's going to take 12 months to get an audited financial or an opinion letter, you should figure it's going to take that long. So,
Yeah, I want to interrupt you because there's a question that says, the old traditional metric timelines, do they have the same meaning in today's hyper-connected world? And if not, what's the difference?
So there's two ways to answer that. One is as it relates to employment, and the other as it relates to fundraising. As it relates to employment, it's true. The head of GE, it's true, it's shorter. The head of GE, when they appointed the head of NBC, he said he wouldn't know for 5 years whether it was a good choice. Well, that won't fly today. And the tenure
Yeah.
of CEOs has come down and down and down. So employment, super fast. It's like a washing machine, it's not, it is what it is. And you want to have a shelter, you want to have a side hustle, you want to have a plan for when the tornado hits you. Hopefully it doesn't. As it relates to investment banking, um, uh, I don't know, because there's so much information available that even when you have everything available, people are doing research to augment it and to do market studies and to do projections. So I don't, I have limited experience, but I don't think it's materially, on the first employment, materially shorter for sure. As it relates to capital raising, probably shorter. On an M&A process, it's probably, you could probably document it being shorter. On a capital raise, maybe a little bit.
And then there's another question. Has there been a shift in how you're using technology to smooth the transaction management process?
Well, sure, 100%. I mean, when you were, oh my God, when you wanted to sell a show 20 years ago, you had to go to Cannes, France. You had to travel the world. You might have faxes, you might have phone calls, and you might have to go in person. Now, you can do a Zoom, and you do, and you can get material via email in less than an hour. Whereas
Right. They don't even have
before,
to put it into the overnight.
yeah, the overnight, and you can make video available. You make video available within a day. So yes, now the decision-making process uh, is quicker, but the material selling part is lightning.
You know, you,
Okay, thank you.
so what kinds of obstacles have you, I assume you have several deals going at once at all times. Is that true?
Correct. Yes.
Ideally?
Ideally, always have room for more.
Because they take a while to cook, right?
They take longer. Look, if it's an M&A process where you're selling a company, those
Yeah.
happen quickly. because those companies generally have been in the market. They've been in business, they have revenue, they have competent staff, they can assemble the data, they already have the data, they can organize it and assemble it quickly. And I'm going to say there's always a buyer for a company that is presentable. It might be a good company, might be not a great company, but it's presentable. I'll say always a buyer. On a capital raise, that's harder. That takes longer.
Oh, okay. So what would be an example? You're saying that when you're trying to sell a company, there's always a buyer somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. It's there's always a buyer somewhere.
There's a
It, it,
real
it
estate mantra, that it only takes one.
that's a great listen. Anybody in a career transition should put that up in front of their computer screen. It only takes one because it's
Yeah, it can
true.
only take one job. It's true on that side as well.
Yeah, yeah. I'd love to.
Somebody would
Someone
like,
has a question about
yeah.
cultivating new deals. That's a good question. How do you go about finding them? Do they find you?
So I will give me a moment. I would say, and I don't have the list of what I'm working on. Um, of the ones I would say I'm thinking of three or four. They 100% were due to my relationships and my outreach. Now, here's the
Okay.
point. I don't have 30 years of investment banking experience, coming to a smaller platform like Oberon from Citibank. It's always interesting to see people come from big banks, 13
Yeah.
billion of transactions. Yeah, you were the fifth person and you were on the floor where the deal was happening and you went to you got a tombstone, a little plexiglass thing.
Yeah.
Um, and secondly, people know me as a board director because I've been on 12 boards and I've been an executive. They didn't. Now they increasingly do. They don't know me as an investment banker. And third, when they come into the firm, they're not going to send it to me unless it's very much in my sector, even though I do have an oil and gas deal now. I have a real estate deal. But the big part of the bell curve is intellectual property, content, media.
Yeah.
Um,
Because that's your area of expertise.
that's my area of expertise. So overwhelmingly, it's my relationships.
Yeah. Well, that would make great sense. And that leads back into your networking process where you're constantly reconnecting with people that you know.
It's gratifying when you can help somebody you like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us some stories about this adventure, this difficult to do assignment. Um, how was the development process through it?
So okay, so there are all my deals have been difficult. There
So
was a
Oberon connected you with these people and they said, oh, we know who Allan is.
on that one, the London
Yeah.
one, yeah, yeah. They came to Oberon. Oberon, I wasn't there. They said nicely, your deal, we don't think we're the right firm for you. Like 2 months later, I get there and they heard. Uh, the two people knew my name and for some reason had heard, or maybe I had pinged them. I'd have to go back. I mean, this was now years ago. I don't know, but they came and so, oh, it does recur to me. Someone had told them that I had joined. And so it was possible for us to come together. So once we came together, it was
So
a
they
great
they really
fit
wanted somebody who understood their business.
and was committed. Commitment counts for a lot. in,
Oh,
in, in the banking world. Commitment counts for a lot. If you can convince, if you can honestly portray that you are going to stay and not hand it off, that you are committed to it personally, that counts for a lot. Perhaps more than anything else, perhaps.
so they want to know that you personally are going to be involved in it. And
Yeah, I've
you may
never
have a
turned it.
team of experts that are helping you with various aspects of it, but you're orchestrating the whole thing.
Yeah, I've never turned a deal over to somebody else for a bunch of reasons. First, the economics are not as good.
Mhm.
Second, I don't think they'll be as good as me. I don't think they'll be as committed as me. And they're committing because of me. So why would I not be committed to them?
Understood. Again, the chat box is open for questions. Um, and please have at it. So you had this oil and gas thing. That's kind of out of your area of expertise, but perhaps there was
Uh,
some connection. Was there
yes,
some element that made it make sense for you?
okay. Matt, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What was the connection?
I don't know.
Yes, you do. Who knows
Someone
what
in
the
your
connection
network?
was? Yeah,
Ah,
that's the
okay.
yeah. I had known this individual for uh, 15 years, and every year we'd connect, short little email, and I had followed his business little by little, and then it got to be of sufficient scope, and I had someone who could work on it with me, who had the deeper expertise, and it seemed like, yeah, this has merit. Now, the current market, current oil and gas market, there's a bunch of things that make it challenging. But yes, the connection was the relationship. Look, someone in the entertainment business, he founded CAA, he was president of Disney. Michael Ovitz said, relationships are what you have between transactions. If you're viewed as just a transaction, that's not as deep and long lasting as a relationship.
Yeah. I think maybe you can comment on this. Trust is a big element in all these business relationships.
Well, yeah. I'm trying to think whether, yes. Okay. So you can overcome lack of trust. And I'll give an example. Uh, the books that I control to executive produce for TV, one of our partners, because we have two or three, one of our partners asked me a question at the very beginning about funding. I made the mistake. I made a bunch of mistakes all at one time. First, I didn't have our contract in front of me. Second, I was in Utah on a different deal, waiting for a car service. And third, I spoke in superlatives. Yes, 100% we have that in place. We didn't. And my point is that got off to a rocky start. I was able to overcome it by first recognizing and apologizing, and then second, being very accurate and very specific. And now we have a great relationship. It didn't take long. People make mistakes. It wasn't, it's not like I was asking them to sign a check or trying to do anything. I was saying, yes, for us to come together, we think we have this, and you're going to bring that. So think about it. But was able to overcome and build a relationship that is built on trust. Trust is I think implicit in a relationship. It can be second or third down the list. If they like you, it helps, by the way.
Yeah, that does help. It does help. Did you want to talk about your board experiences?
So yeah,
Or did you want to keep going on investment banking?
so on the investment banking side, the only thing I'll say is that the due diligence, you should get yourself a due diligence list if it's relevant, if you're at a place that's going to have possible transaction, and you'll look very smart. It's possible all of you have that. Um, in addition to that, I wanted to mention just very briefly, as you go on in your career, you want to consider board service, but board service is even harder than finding your next gig. Every day, 10,000 people retire, and I suspect there are 100 more qualified than me for my next board role. Having said that, my first board role came when I was CEO of a venture capital portfolio company, and I was put on the board, and that was great. Um, Board service is a great activity for two reasons. First, if you care about this country, we need better boards. We need better board members. 2008, the board members of Bear Stearns didn't know that 35-to-1 leverage was dangerous. The board members of AIG didn't know that $180 billion of CDOs or whatever they were dangerous. It's preposterous. And so my point is, it's worth caring about the future, because our children suffer, and your children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren. So you should care. So that's one. Two, um, it's best to start your board journey with modest aspirations. Get out a non-for-profit board where when the question comes up, have you been on a board? You can say, yes, I was on the board of our local hospital. Saying no will make it extremely hard. It's very hard as it is. I've been on 12 boards. I'm currently on 3. I've never been on 12 at the same time. 4 public boards. I've been chairman of a public company. I've been CEO of a public company. I've been chair of the audit committee of a public company. Been on 4 private equity portfolio company boards and 4 venture capital boards.
Mhm.
And I've written a lot. And if you go to All Media Ventures on the Thought tab, you'll see a lot that I've written for board governance and CEOs. And there's 2 columns. One is live appearances, television, etc., and the other would be printed. So again, that's allmediaventures.com, 4th tab. You'll see a lot. You want to educate yourself and get out on not-for-profit.
Okay, we have some more questions here. Corporate / organizational governance and the New World Order. Are we more or less connected with perpetual communication? And how is the best way to define the quality of a networking relationship?
Okay, so the example was given years ago where there was a fire on a plane on the other side of the planet, and within 20 minutes, it was around the world before the board knew, and it was a pretty major, I believe it was an airplane that had an explosion or a fire.
Mm.
So I will say 2 things, and they say the sign of a mature mind is the ability to keep 2 conflicting ideas in their head at the same time. Continual, perpetual, always on is the business dynamic. You, as a human, need to turn off and check out for your own sanity, or your energy and effectiveness and cohesiveness will decline. I have this conversation often. If you are on your phone morning, noon, and night, and go to bed with it and wake up with it, and don't take I take Saturdays off, as Matt knows. I take Saturdays off. My phone goes off, and
Oh.
and when we were raising 4 kids, all the game, all the TV, all the phone, uh, so because it's perpetual, always on, you need to give yourself a break and a rest. So that's how I answer that question. Yes, and hope not.
Okay, let's see, other questions. But there's a lot of them here. It said you help monetize iconic media properties like Archie Comics to Hallmark Channel. What do you think private equity or strategic investors often miss when evaluating an intellectual property as an asset class?
Less and
Great
less.
question.
Yeah, less and less. I will say intellectual property as opposed to the cash flow. The cash flow is volatile, which we all know private equity does not like volatile cash flows. They like steadily increasing recurring revenue. So that's on one end of the continuum. It is very possible always to create value, even with dormant intellectual property, but it takes a different kind of skill. Now, some of that's in private equity, but it takes a skill that understands what drives the high volatility and how you can stabilize it. So I would say there is more and more interest. So look, let me give you one that's in the middle. The recorded music business. The recorded music business has attracted tremendous amount of private equity. Why? Because it's less volatile. Why? Because people will listen to a song hundreds of times, and every time you do, it generates a penny. So the intellectual property around songwriting, around song masters has generated billions of dollars. You've also had companies that create, I'll say, film content, TV content that have had private equity backers. Look, there just was a transaction last week by Shamrock. So Scooter Braun had got a hold of Taylor Swift's first library for 6 albums, had owned it, sold it to Shamrock. Shamrock sold it, which is a private equity fund. Shamrock sold it to back to Taylor Swift. So to summarize, some of the characteristics of intellectual property are volatile, which is not attractive. But in skilled hands, there are, I'm going to say, almost always ways to make it less volatile and to increase its earning power.
Okay, another question. Starting out a company outside of a large enterprise support and moving to a smaller size or running your own company, do you recommend strategic partnerships with a similar size company to increase activity in a pipeline? The pros and cons of what you have learned from your experience.
Okay, to quote Mel Brooks, yes and yes. So here's the thing, here's the other side of that. If you are raising an A round, initial capital, it shouldn't be family, friends and family, but if you're raising A round capital, you know, millions of dollars, if you take a strategic, it will lessen your curb appeal to other strategics by definition. If you have a competitor of other strategics, they're not going to be so excited. And this happens a lot, by the way. This happens a lot. However, if the benefits are so dramatic and you're prepared to understand that the exit is going to be almost certainly to that strategic investor, then it could be good. Situations different. I've seen a lot of circumstances where the strategic investor has destroyed the value. And in fact, we had a potential client. We didn't take it, but there was intellectual property, 25 patents. They had won a lawsuit against their strategic investor and a jury trial, and the judge overturned it, which I've never, you know, and I'm not an expert, but I thought was extraordinary. So now they're on appeal. They're out of money. The strategic has crushed them, and it's too bad. So eyes wide open.
So, in addition to networking, can you provide any insights into obtaining paid board seats?
So yes, work for a venture capital portfolio company and asked to go on the board. Work for a private equity portfolio company and ask for the board. Help a friend who is raising capital and asked to go on the board. By the way, going on a board has risks, and you know, 30 seconds on that.
Right. You should elaborate on that, Allan.
Yeah. So
Is it reputational risk, money risk? What are we talking about here?
all of that. So one of the first, in fact, I want to say the first public board I went on was a mess. They had okay, they had just raised 100 million and lost it. They were being sued by their investment bank for losing it. They were being sued by their shareholders for losing it. They had a going concern letter from their auditors, and everybody on this call should know what that means. The directors, two of the directors had resigned. They had fired the CEO, and 3 sons were in the business. So I'm thinking, whoa. Now it was in a sector that I knew really well. I said, well, I think I can keep them out of bankruptcy. And I did. But still, I'm at night, I'm thinking, wow, this could really turn out badly. And so I put everything in my wife's name. Now, when I tell that, there's usually a little twitter of laughter because I quickly add, it's not for everybody. It's not for everybody. But for me, I didn't want to lie awake at night. There is significant reputational risk. There is significant financial risk. It's manageable. You can get insurance. If you've got nothing to lose, then, you know, set it aside. But I had a lot to lose. So, you know, there's a Yiddish proverb, choose your dreams carefully because they may come true. You may find yourself in a nightmare. It happens to people. Now, that may be 1 out of 1,000 boards, or 1 of 500, or 1 of 100, or the board you happen to stumble onto. I've got 2. I have an offer to go on a board, and I've had the offer for many months, and I'm not accepting it. It's too perilous, and it's too big a distraction, and it's too big of a time suck, and the reputational damage is. I'm not taking it. So, Matt, did I give the full Monty on that?
You
Yeah,
sure did.
no, that's good.
Have you found your firm is seeing more M&A opportunities in this current middle market climate or fewer? And how are you positioning yourself to capitalize on the current climate?
Okay, so a couple things. So first, I want to be careful. I'm speaking just as Allan Grafman. I'm not representing the firm. Secondly, there are undulations, if you will. The current economic environment is not sufficiently dire, catastrophic, or pending doom yet to have a material impact. So I don't wish to characterize broadly, because for Allan Grafman,
Yeah.
it's all about my relationships, because everything I work on comes from my relationships. I'm not handed something. Haven't been handed something yet.
I think life is always about relationships, trust, trend, and I would say, and I'd ask you, don't you think that going with trust is transparency? And I think
So
that they are linked. What do you think?
so Peggy, I think so. You know what? It's hard to be transparent and open. And in my experience, the more open you can be with people you care about, I'm not saying walking in the door and plots right down, but there was once a talk by a guy who was speaking, and he had a salesperson who had been turned down and is walking out the door, turned around and said, "Can you give a sister a break?" And got the order. And I'm not advocating any one approach, but sometimes it's appropriate to really share maybe more than you're comfortable with. Not always, and not to everybody, and not in every circumstance. Um, and it's hard to do. It's hard to do, but you want to try when it can be helpful.
Okay, now here's a question. Could you share your some learning lessons for successfully managing diverse careers? And then they wanted to know when you pivoted into investment banking and then giving it up. And then they wanted to know if you had advice for introverts who somewhat natural givers who are not comfortable with this type of networking.
Okay, so that's the most important question, because I was very lucky. I started at 16 as a radio announcer, and I've done a lot of public speaking. So that's that's a really important question. And Matt, you should come back to it for your group in future episodes,
Sure.
because actually a name someone who came here a while ago, and my wife just had breakfast, and the husband just lost his job. He's 65. And she said, maybe Allan can help him because my husband is an introvert. So I, okay. Uh, so one, there are ways to increase one's comfort. You need to put some time against it, but there is a natural comfort level. I would say one way is to find someone who can speak on your behalf and provide introductions. Now, that sounds a little, but third-party endorsement is super strong. There's LinkedIn, where there's 20 or 30 not referrals, but recommendations. So I don't have great insight on how to help an introvert. Perhaps being part of groups where you don't have to do the work, where you plop down the financial executive networking group, or you plop down in other groups where you have an affinity. So these can be social settings where you don't have to work hard. Get a personal card, get a QR on your phone, read up, and not everybody is made to be doing what I do. But Matt, you should really
You
you
know,
should devote.
I would just say that being an introvert is not an impediment to being a good networker, but you have to prepare. When you're reaching out to somebody, you don't just randomly reach out to them. You want to make some connection first. I always tell people if they're going to reach out to somebody to drop in a little artillery, an email explaining who they are and why they want to talk. So the conversation isn't starting at zero. I think that's being an extrovert. I can start a conversation with anybody, right? An introvert, I think they need to do a little preparation. I think that's the only difference.
Well,
Um,
I think there's another difference, and that is that people forget that an extrovert needs time to process in their mind. An extrovert gets energy from all that conversation and they don't take that time. So you have to, as Matt's saying, be prepared and then take the time to reflect, to process what's going on, either as a preparation or as a follow through before you go to the next step. An extrovert will just go zip from here to there without ever taking a breath.
Did I answer the first part of the question, Peggy?
I don't know. I can look at it. Let's see. The first
So
part,
managing multiple careers, Alan.
multiple careers, yeah.
So, okay, there's some dadisms. Don't wait till you're thirsty to drill your well. Consider having an LLC. Don't call it Charlie Muldoon Consulting. Don't call it Ariel Boyman Consulting. Don't call it Petty Marketing to Go LLC. Call it something other than that, so it doesn't sound like, you know, you're in your basement trying to figure it out.
Yeah, street names are also a bad idea because you might move.
Oh yeah, that's that too. So I would say, and when I say dadisms, there's a couple that my kids all know. They've retired the first one, which is Dad's Right. That one they got rid of, so much to my chagrin. They understand it's still number one, but I can't use it. Drill your well before you're thirsty. Set up something that allows you to get checks and put on a business card and tell people you're passionate about something that's reflected on your card. I was fortunate to a degree that when I got laid off at Tribune, um, a friend of mine knew I had these relationships, and he did the initial setting it up and working with me. So I had a partner for the first year. So that was great. So I would urge. So it still wasn't easy, by the way. And my skills are rather exceptionally diffuse, which is perhaps not great. So I set up All Media Ventures, and I've had some success. Would welcome a lot more. I probably can help everyone on this call either monetizing content, or perhaps if they are trying to raise money in a significant way as an investment banker, or perhaps there's a board situation that I can help them figure out, or they need a board member on a company that they're already on. It's easy to find me, allmediaventures.com, LinkedIn, also oberonsecurities.com.
Everybody on the call has your contact information.
All right, that's good. No quiz, no test.
No,
Everybody's got it.
I think it bears repeating something you were saying about forming an LLC. That's always a great idea. But along with that, you have All Media Ventures. I have the Financial Executives Consulting Group. Guess what we do?
Yeah.
Okay. The name should be meaningful, right? And it's not easy to figure out what you want as your name, but forming an LLC is relatively straightforward. If it's a single person one, you can file it as a Schedule C. It's really not that difficult. And then you can get a URL, and you're not, mattbudd@gmail.com. You're somebody that sounds like they have a business, and that makes people more open to talking to you for business prospects, let's say.
Yep. 100%.
All good things. A lot of people, I don't know if I've talked to you about it. I talk to so many people every week, but I'm into in the box thinking.
I love it.
I think we did talk about this. People don't look to see what's in the box. You can't sell from an empty wagon. We start there, and there's a lot in your wagon, right? There's a lot of stuff that you do that no one else really does, and you just have to think about it and come up with what it is your core driving force is. Yours is media. Am I wrong?
Mine is media.
Everything's most in your life, most stems from media.
I would say I define it a little more broadly. Double helix, monetizing intellectual property, monetizing content. And I even have a little notepad which says, if I can get it. Let's see here. Can you read that? What does that say on the bottom? Can you see that?
No, I can't read it.
Connecting ideas with money.
Yes. Good. Okay. You need a theme.
Yes.
And people are very modest. They don't think they have one, but they always do. I was talking to someone yesterday for a not-for-profit assignment I'm working on, and it it turns out that the core of the not-for-profit that she's dealt with is that they always have multiple entities that they are servicing. There's an overall not-for-profit, but they have different interests. Maybe it's a school, maybe it's the church or whatever it is, and that's a skill. Not everybody can do that. Again, we're dealing with a crowd of very modest people. That's the problem.
Well, hopefully you'll empower them to be effectively modest. How about that?
That's what we try to do. That's what we try to do, is get people to understand that they have great value and just give them some easy ways. You know, you mentioned it at the very beginning, this, um, I'm sorry, who was it that was in the conversation that they didn't say anything? If you ask a good question,
Dale Carnegie.
Dale Carnegie, thank you. I'm sorry, but I'm so into this managing this whole thing, I forgot for a second. But if you just come up with some easy things that you can say to people to start a conversation. My son was teasing me once that he goes, "I can't believe you can start a conversation with anybody." But if you just ask people just as a routine, say, "So you're at this meeting. What do you do when you're not here?" People will start talking, and then that gives you time to think of what you want to say next.
So Matt, two things, and they're both very relevant back to people who may not
Matt, there's
relish.
like 3 minutes left.
I know.
So one, and Tony Robbins says that the power of questions, and you just touched on the power of questions. And the other
Yes.
thing, try to offer something of value, something that you've read in your sector. I see, and it may be relevant, but try to offer something of value as opposed to, just regurgitating. And the power of questions, genuine interest. So those are powerful things.
And
I think there's something else that
like
you
a
touched
did
on
you
during
know
our,
question
I'm
is
sorry?
always helpful. A did you know question, something that that might be that lots of people could use. Did you know? And then they will, oh, well, no, I didn't really think about that.
Okay, so Peggy, something I learned from my wife, you want to avoid yes, no
Oh,
questions.
absolutely.
Yes.
Only open-ended questions.
Open-ended questions. So have you heard of, well, not have you heard, what do you think about?
Right, right, right. And it's
Nothing political. We're not allowed to do that.
right, and yeah, it's not the what, it's the why and the how. So why is this important? Why do you think that this is a fact? How have you done things? Whereas what do you do? It's an answer, I am a, and then if they're an introvert, they may just shut up. And now you're left with, oh, or they
Yeah,
may
but
say,
if you're an introvert, if you just learn to ask a few basic questions, like what do you do when you're not here? Do you have any hobbies? I mean, you can come up with something that you're comfortable asking people. And as they're talking, that gives you a break and you can, uh, you know, gather your energy again.
right.
So I'm just gonna, we're at 5 o'clock. I just want to make one tip that I think Allan, I know, strongly believes in. There's three kinds of networking, right? There's every week you have to make new contacts because people are bleeding off at the bottom. So you have to pour more people in the top at all times. Same thing true with your deals, right? If you don't keep adding to the top of the funnel,
Top of the funnel.
all right, so number two is you have to stay in touch, and you touched on this at the beginning. You keep in touch with all of the people in your contact pool at least twice a year, right? If you don't contact your old friends and tell them you still love them, they don't know. Okay. So the third piece of networking, and probably the most important one that anybody can do, is introducing your new people to the old people that you know. It's such a gift. And you do it's the classic two uh, two birds with one stone. You introduce two people who don't know each other but should. If you think about it, birds of a feather flock together, right? So the people that you're meeting are people who are somehow connected to you, and they're connected to all the people that you know as well somehow. And if you put them together, they talk about you. Wow.
That's a great
Alan,
thing,
maybe
Matt.
you want to add something to that before we close.
No, those, you know what, Matt, you should do a Matt, you should do a, include in your book that I've been asking you to write for 20 years. Those are three
Well, I'm going
great
to get you to
ways.
market my book.
Okay. All right. We can talk about that. But yeah,
I
those
don't.
are great. You know, connecting people, they will both, like you said, they'll talk about you and they will thank you and you will be, you will have provided value and you can then follow up. So that's a great one. And that's worthy of high priority. Hey, John's an
So
Iota, I
everybody
like this
stuck
one.
with us for the whole hour, which is unusual, and I want to thank everybody for doing that. Alan, any quick closing remarks?
Quick closing remarks. Friend of Matt Budd.
Okay. And you should know, most of my friends have nicknames for me. Alan's nickname for me?
Chairman Matt,
Oh, no, no. I was thinking more the working man's friend.
the working man's friend. I got
I
two
love
for
that.
you. Pick one.
Yeah.
Which one do you like
I
better,
have an
Matt?
old friend, he called me the can-do guy.
Yeah, which one do you like better, Chairman Matt or the working man's friend?
The chairman.
Okay,
It
well,
sounds kinder, right?
okay, all
Not
right.
the CEO cracks a whip. I'm just the esteemed chairman.
Okay,
That's what I prefer.
all
No,
right.
Alan, I want to thank you for being on Chat with Matt. You will certainly uh, be recorded as one of our better interviewees, and I want to thank you for coming. And I want to thank all of you for joining us on Chat with Matt and for staying with us the whole hour. So thank you. Everyone knows how to reach me. Anyone who signed up for the meeting knows how to reach Alan. Alan is a very helpful person, and if he can assist you in any way, I can assure you he will. So thank you again for being on Chat with Matt, and
Thank
you can tell all your friends about this event, and it will be up on our website soon. Thank you.
Thank you all. Be well.
Have
Thank
a great
you.
evening, everyone.